good. We are live. Big old boobs of mine, Lord. Again, we are live. Just
what I did not.
how have you guys' weekend been?
Amazing.
While we're sharing as people come back and watch this video. Mine has been super peaceful.
Peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
Made it over to the Uptown Art Fair.
Oh yeah.
I may actually go back. I'll strip for like the 9th time. I need all my friends to become consistent. We need to all be one big group of friends instead of 3 different pockets of friends.
For real, girl, just make it easy on everybody.
Exactly. I haven't seen this yet.
I'm going to see Detroit. That's actually going to be part of, as we introduce our topic, part of my self-care is taking myself on dates.
Okay.
And so I'm going to go see Detroit.
Right.
Nobody else in my house wants to see that with me.
They might have coolest times.
Let alone see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you go by yourself,
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our annual edition of Let's Unpack. We do have a couple of more visitors coming. We have some special guests that will be sliding in as we begin this discussion. As everybody logs in and begins to share, I am Jatan White, host and creator. Here comes one of our special guests now. I'm host and creator of Let's Unpack. Come on in and have a seat. And to my left, wonderful co-host, Miss Nita Kellogg.
Hey.
And just walked in Miss Jasmine, and you guys all know who Jasmine is.
Hello, everyone. Peace.
Miss Mothering Through My Pain herself. And then to my far left, Miss Tanika, our motivational speaker and family coach on our panel. We have a couple more guests coming. So, again, we are live. This is a conversation. This is what happens when you have conversations. All right. So, Jasmine, as you settle in, think about what you want to say opening up. Oh, here comes our other special guest. I'm really excited. I've never, I keep hearing about this particular person. Come on in. Hi.
Oh.
I know this baby.
Beautiful.
Hi, how are you? I was just talking about you. I am so excited to finally sit in your space.
Hello.
The whole community is talking
I'm
about
a
you.
hugger. What's up?
Oh,
community?
yes.
How y'all doing?
Yes. Yes.
I need to wash my hair.
I was like, hey, I know this kid. It's your kid.
Let's just fix your head.
Hi. Yes. What's your name? Nita. Hello. Nice to meet you.
Oh, that looks like a great hug. Oh, my gosh. It's so nice to finally be in your space.
Okay.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course.
Live so that Facebook can hear us and they can just be quiet.
Yeah, they can see you up here on the camera. You say hi to everybody that's watching. So welcome to Let's Unpack. Again, today we're going to be talking about radical self-care, prioritizing you. And I'll let the guests start introducing themselves. And we're going to have one more special guest who's here more for us in the way of special than the audience. But I'm hopeful that he'll participate in the conversation. But Jasmine, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in relation to the topic.
Yes, peace everyone. My name is tBoudah. I am an activist, a doula, birth worker, and I am the author of Mothering Through Pain and Suffering in Silence. So I have dedicated some time to creating space for Black women to talk about motherhood and the authentic pieces of what motherhood brings and how difficult it is, and also the joys.
Amen. Amen. I'm loving it. Miss Bula, if you want to introduce yourself.
Peace and love, y'all. My name is Katrina Olurontomi. I am a liberation worker and a messenger of sorts. I am a collection of voices, so I dwell in a lot of spirits of beautiful beings and essences that have been blessed for me, but also that I've been gifted into the world to be able to journey with, which is the birth of my work. I have an organization called SHINE, which stands for Soar Higher, You Never End. And it's committed to elevating the vibration for Black women, but particularly through the role of sisterhood, which is a distinct experience from sisterhood. It places a special emphasis on being able to honor the light in myself, such that in any circumstance, in any reality, I'm able to honor the light in my sister, which allows for us to elevate collectively. And so that's a little bit about who I am.
Aren't they awesome? Awesome. I know, right? Yes. So we're going to jump right in. We'll work from Tanika backwards. First question, as we tell everybody else, we're not limited to these questions, just to keep the conversation going. It's really a conversation. Today we do have a tiny person, so we'll be mindful of our words. First question is, what is radical self-care?
I think that's definitions defined on a personal basis. It all depends on who the person is and what it takes for them to care for themselves. For me, the most radical form of self-care for me was learning to say no and not caring for everyone else. When you're the caregiver in the family, when you're labeled the strong one, and then just learning to say no and not putting so much on your plate that you're going a mile wide instead of a mile deep in all your efforts. So for me, that's what radical self-care is.
Awesome. That was deep. Learning to say no. Wow.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Self-preservation.
That's what's up.
So are we just jumping in?
Yeah, we can popcorn it. That works for me until everybody's ready.
Yeah, so I know that self-love and self-love actually has been a trending topic this year. So I'm kind of torn when I hear radical self-love, because I think personally it's just us returning. So something radical is you going above and beyond to reclaim what is yours, but most people see it as radical. So I believe it's literally just retraining our minds to put ourselves first and to think of ourselves as human. So again, saying no, and in my experience, just everyone seeing me as Superwoman, right? Me just trying to unpack that and say, you know what, actually Superwoman gets tired, and I'm tired, and right now I want to say no, and I need to say no for myself. So I think I understand the term, but I'm also want to challenge and say, like, how is radical actually meaning, like, returning back to self and putting self at center.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Y'all, yes.
Yes.
I am loving this. Yes. Y'all done taught me something.
Yes. So to go off of this piece around like getting back to self, I think radical self-care requires for us to honor our roles as spirits. I think a lot of times we navigate this plane as though we are like physical beings, and because we have been programmed to operate that way, we don't necessarily allow ourselves, or even know how in many ways, like to flow with the relationship that we have with nature, right? The relationships that we have with divinity, the relationships that we have with authentic love and authentic support, community. And so I believe radical self-care positions us to be able to surrender to that process such that we can open ourselves up to truly get back to the essence of who we are, which is really just spirit, a ball of energy. And you can't give energy if you don't have energy. So it's getting back to that inner standing so that we can like experience that, and doing it by any means necessary, because in this society that we live in, there's no space created for that. So being radical requires for us to step up to the plate and just say, like, whatever it takes, like, I'm going to do it, be it saying no, be it like not being Superwoman, right? Being like, I actually have things that I have to take care of that I'm not going to say no to because this is for me. Right. So
Right. I love all of this because I am so for keeping my cup full. I've got nothing to give if my cup is not overflowing.
That's right.
Yes. I'm loving this. What you think, Nita?
I think that was summed up very well by both the guests.
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't, it's all about returning, and not having to put a parameter on what that looks like for the individual, but making sure that we have that opportunity because it's a birthright. You know?
Yes. Ooh, y'all was good today. Yes. So here's one I, as a parent, have struggled with this in the past. Is it selfish to put my needs before my kids? Is it selfish to prioritize me? What do you guys think about that? And why or why not?
I struggled with it for a long time. Putting yourself before your kids, like it's internal, it's maternal to say, take care of your kids. And even though as our children start to become more independent and they grow, their needs become different, maybe a little less, but different. And so there's never a real time where you have that opportunity to say, I am going to remove myself from this situation and put myself first. I've been challenged with that for a long time. Still learning how. Can't even really say if I've actually come to that point or not, because it's embedded in me that they come first in my mind from the time my first child was born. She was placed in my arms. I have been a mother. I've been a mother. Even if I'm introduced, well, who are you? First thing comes to my mind is I'm a mother.
Yes.
Before I say I'm a woman, before I say I'm a person, before I say I'm Tanika, before I say I'm anything else, the first thing that comes to my mind is I'm a mother. And learning to not feel the word is up there on the screen. Selfish.
Yes.
To not put myself secondary to even my children at points and times in my life. There will be times that I can't see myself ever not having them as the forefront because they kind of make my world go around. They always have. But there will be points and times where I will have to say, again, no to them and yes to myself. And it's a challenge. And I struggle with it daily. I don't know if you ever get to a point where you can just say, as a parent and as a mother and as a primary caregiver at that, no, I'll come first and they'll have to take the second cup of tea. I just don't, I struggle with it regularly. And my children are adults.
Wow. That's deep. Interesting. I'm a piggyback a little because I think, one of my first experience with having my first child was my mother was like, well, no more presents for you. Right? No more anything. Don't call me, ask me for $20 unless it's for him. So right away I knew that I was in the back seat and he was kind of in the front seat, which made rearing a young Black man very interesting, to say the least, right? He became like this image of what I wanted as a Black man. And so I had to learn that, one, I needed to be first, so that, one, I could show him how to put himself first. And that, two, I didn't deserve to be in the back seat just because I simply became a parent. So I struggled with that for a long time until I actually had my daughter. And I was finding like, no, being a parent, adulting is very, very hard and challenging. I need me time. And I began to date myself, which is something I shared when I came in. I call it Jatan time. I go have Jatan time. I won't talk. And I'm doing just what makes me happy. I don't care what the people around me think about. I don't care if I dance up and down Brookdale Boulevard. If that made me happy that day, then that's what I'm doing. So I'm with you on that. And it is embedded in us from as soon as you have a baby. It's like that's your responsibility. You got to make sure they eat, drink, sleep, have a roof. Nothing else matters about you. And we stopped getting our hair done, our nails done, and going hanging out with our friends. And it's crazy, but yeah, I had to get past it, and it is a struggle. Yeah,
I think partially too when we think about it. Like a lot of us, it was embedded from a younger age. So like I took on the mothering role of my little brother like at 12, 13, my mother's mental illness kind of kicked in. So, and I see a lot of girls going through like having to take care of siblings. And so, it kind of is that when you have your first child, it's like instant because of some of those situations too.
So, I thank you for bringing that up in self-care because as a doula, so a birth worker, someone who mothers and nurtures women throughout the most vulnerable time in their life, it is something that I have to coach and something that I learned the hard way. Like it took me literally breaking down, having postpartum depression and being in a space where those messages were cute from people who loved me and cared about me, but it actually hurt a lot. And it actually put me in a space where I began to feel bad for 2 years, honestly. For 2 years of my daughter's life, I didn't do much for myself. And I had mommy guilt really bad, like really bad. I'm saying like I could buy myself something really small and I'd be like, but my child. And I think that, again, you said you brought up raising a young man, but raising a young woman who may one day choose to be a mother. I want to send the messages to her that you can't pour from an empty cup, right? And you matter. And if I tell her that they watch us, right? So if they see us always putting them first and never doing things for ourselves, then we perpetuate that cycle. So when Maya turned 2, I began having conversations with her, and I actually started to go to yoga class every Tuesday. And I would talk to her and I would say, like, this is for, just pick one, baby. I would tell her that, this is for me and what I needed to do. And having those conversations, it actually helped me, it coached me a little bit more. So I think that we cannot give them what we don't have. So even if we're giving them everything and we're scraping from the bottom of that cup, we're still doing it from a deficit. So I would challenge and say that self-care for mothers is more important, because you have another person that's watching you, that's kind of picking up on your models, and then you are just teaching them how to interact with the world. So mamas, take care of yourselves.
Yes, please.
I think what's interesting about that, as a person who doesn't have my own physical children that came from my vagina, I feel like for me, my own clarity around this particular topic has come from two pieces. One is the one that you mentioned around stepping up to raise my little brother when I was 12. And then the second piece is just watching my mom and watching her patterns. And as recently as this past Sunday, I was doing a space with my mom where I had her like forcibly stop sweeping, to really sit still and like be okay with saying what she wanted. And it was for something as simple as going to go pick up her grandchildren for the weekend for no other reason than because I want to spend time with my grandchildren. And just watching her never ever put herself first, never ever pour into herself, never ever like take her last or use her first to do anything for herself has been like a very interesting journey. And it pushes me a lot to think about like, how am I showing up in a space where I'm allowing my mom to experience me so that she knows that her job is not necessarily or ever will be complete, but that she knows that her job has been so beautiful and so bountiful that it is endless. And the only thing I need at this point is for her to do for herself so that I can have that reflection of myself given back to me. And that's a journey, because she's real, you know, she's in her 50s. So talking to her about that is like, well, you know, my children, like even when I've come to her about certain things, she like, you know, I never made decisions that were for me. Like straight off the bat, she would say like everything was always either about my children or it was because of survival. So I don't know, you know, and even honoring her in her ability to say that is a part of her being like, you know, like that's a part of self-care. Like you being able to say like, this is where I'm at and like, this is what I've always had to do. And me being able to say, but that's not what you have to do for the rest of your life. So it's interesting to kind of watch it, but then also to be in a place where before I had physical children, I had this opportunity to kind of reshape and redefine so that I will hopefully, right, like be able to birth children from my portal and still honor myself and know like how important that is. So it's interesting. Like so much of what y'all was talking about makes me think about my mom.
That is interesting. Mom, I love you.
Yes, thank you for all love. She's probably not on Facebook.
Yeah, she won't watch this for months. She gets on Facebook every 3 or 4 months. That was deep. Thank you for sharing that. That was awesome. We got a couple. Did you want to see you respond to Hi Marla Livney? She said yes, that she struggles with having people call her a bad mom because she wants to put herself. So that's good. Thank you for that comment.
A bad
you are from personal
Yeah.
experience, you are an amazing mother.
I never for a break or shouldn't have one. No, you have to have a break, and I think that that's the point. And when you wonder, like, there's so many people who get in spaces where then we start. Who are you talking to?
One moment, we have baby on the phone.
FaceTime. No. Here you go. But I think getting to spaces where we have breaks, and for people who don't understand the self-care piece, so we have some negative habits, or I don't know how to describe it, just dysfunctional habits with self and loving self, and people perpetuate that without really thinking critically about what that means. So when I give presentations about my book, I talk about my first experience with Superwoman, which was my grandmother. And my grandmother did everything. She was the pillar of our house. When she was sick or when she was down, my grandfather didn't know what to do, but my grandmother passed away from an aneurysm. So it was literally like her body was shutting down on her. Her brain exploded from being Superwoman all the time and never having space. So I think we really need to challenge, what is a bad mom? Even some mothers who I had to check myself when I first had my daughter, being like, wow, how could you leave your baby, like, you know, and just be out? And I thought about attachment, and I thought about me breastfeeding and how it's difficult. And for some women, that's the only time that they have, and they have someone who's caring for their child, and they're like, they just want to be out and be free and be liberated, and numbing, you know, out in the club dancing, drinking, that's numbing. And that means that all of the messages have told you that you don't matter. So during this time, when I have time, I'm going to make it matter, and I'm going to do what I want to do. So bad and good mom, like, okay, there's some people doing some harmful things to children, but also think about from the mother standpoint of, we talked about girlhood and, you know, not experiencing girlhood all the way, and then now you're a mother having not experienced womanhood, and my story is I haven't experienced womanhood. So you got a lot of little girls out there that just want to be loved and free, you know.
Amen. Right on, y'all.
I think that point that you said makes me think a lot about like that next question, which is like the benefits of embracing radical self-care, because I remember when I used to like, it was I held a lot of frustration toward my mom because of expectations that I held about like what it meant for her to be a bad mother, good mother, right? So my journey in self-care and my journey in loving on myself allowed for me to truly see my mother for the fullness and the abundance that she is, and see that it's not that she was a bad mother or a good mother. She was the best mother that she knew how to be with what she had and what she still has, right? And so when I think about like the benefits, I think they are just like tremendous, right? Like when it comes to embracing yourself and loving and caring on yourself, not only does it shape and think of and help you see yourself differently, but it allows for you to then experience and nurture the girl that never got to fully get nurtured because mama wasn't able to, right? It allows for you to embrace and love on other people, to build genuine sisterhood and to love on each other, and to give that love and trust that you are receiving it just by the mere nature of you giving it at the same time. And I think a lot of times when we think about self-care, we kind of like separate these aspects of ourselves. So like if someone thinks about health, they'll be like, oh, well, I need to like eat well, or I need to like, you know, make sure I'm working out, or, you know, these like aspects that don't necessarily align to your spiritual development. And so when I think about this concept, I'm thinking about like what it means to bring those things together, and what it means to make sure that they have a relationship that allows for you to truly transform. And I know for me, I used to be over 400 pounds, and my journey in self-care is really what has allowed for me to release the waste that I've released, and truly be able to come to this place of clarity and just like connectedness to myself, which allows for me to then like all these aspects of my life to be nurtured. So I think the benefits are just like tremendous, because they're endless once you're able to like love on yourself and genuinely care for yourself, and care for the girl and care for your mama and care for everybody just by nature of giving to yourself.
Right on. We could end
the
show on that. We could end the show on that.
It's funny because, you know, like as you talk about the girls, I had my team this week, and we all are in Project Diva focusing on our team of girls, just spending some quality time with them just in our team. And that was part of our conversation. Like, there's no book to raising a child, and your mother was once you. So like now you guys are making the decisions that as you grow older, your moms are making at the same present moment. Like, and we're all trying to figure it out, you know, but then I'm also able to talk to them in a way of like, okay, so this weekend you made a bad choice with that dude, right? You know, thinking beforehand, like you might have made that bad decision, but now we all have made that bad decision. And coming from an adult who's now being able to be whole, right? And be honest, and like, this is what it is. Like, that's such a special space when we as women can be whole or be working towards that, to be able to then give it back to whether it's them or the elders.
And then it repeats itself.
Right. We won't be talking about vicious cycles anymore. We'll be talking about cycles of love, and that would be awesome.
I love consumption.
Yes. I am so for embracing self-care. I honestly talk about, and Tanika's gonna laugh because I'm often giving myself compliments. I don't really need anybody else. I'm really I'm a Scorpio.
Oh, me too.
Awesome. So I am really in love with me, but that's a journey, right? I wasn't always this person, and I'm not always this person, right? There are days where I struggle with being in love with me. Maybe it was a bad decision I made, or maybe it was a decision I should have made, and maybe I'm procrastinating. So I'm not always in love with myself, but the majority of the time I'm in love with myself. But when those spaces are in those times when I'm able to recognize them and then talk to myself and give my inner self a different kind of power and not let those negative spaces or take that downward spiral approach, which Lou Tice is big on talking about. So yeah, that's right on. How about you, Jasmine? What you think?
What was the question? I missed it.
What are the benefits of embracing? ADHD.
Yeah. So basically, for me, my journey with like being more intentional about radical self-love or falling in love with self started on a couch with my therapist, and her basically saying like, you've been surviving postpartum depression for months, and because you're so strong and you're used to being so strong, you've just pushed it off. So I was working 80 hours a week. I was nursing my child, and what happened then, my question when I got that title or whatever, what I did was I asked, what were my options, what can I do? And basically that's the benefits where a lot of people are struggling. I changed my diet. I upped my vitamin intake, my mineral intake. And I literally say that I cured myself from depression and anxiety and all of those things. And had I not asked that question, I would have been sent to a place that gave me a medication just to cure that depression thing, right? It's a Band-Aid, right? So I get even now, and like you said, it's up and down. There are days where I'm like, yo, what? Now I'm getting more into like astrology and like what's going on. What are my feelings? What do I feel in my body when I'm having? Olo's my coach, sometimes, I literally get to a space where when I'm so stretched, I get contractions in my back. And when it first happened to me, I was like, I don't know what's going on. No, I'm not pregnant. Like,
and I'm definitely not having a baby today.
So the benefits are literally like you take control. I reclaimed myself. Yes. And this new thing is like reclaim my time is the new thing.
Yeah. I'm here for that. I am here for that.
But I literally reclaimed my life, my body, my mind, and understood how my brain, my mind, my yoni, my womb, it's all connected. So when I get in spaces where I don't take, when my vitamin D is low, my mood goes, and then I'm like, why am I in the bed again? Okay, like when was the last time you took your vitamin D in Minnesota? Because melanated people in Minnesota are.
And ought to be like hand sanitizer around here.
Yeah. Feeling bad, vitamin D, probiotic. So I think the benefits are literally like it saved my life. I was in a space where I didn't want to live and I didn't want to continue pushing. So it can mean life or death, and death can be a spiritual death. It can be emotional. It can be physical. It could be disease in your body.
It could be a combination of
all of those. Yes. So
nice.
The benefits are just
limitless.
Yes,
they're limitless. There is no unhealthy. I think there's no unhealthy thing for caring for yourself that could happen. So right, I don't think anybody would disagree. I don't think anybody. I don't think even an expert would disagree with that.
And that goes with like what it looks like. That's really important. Like if you don't take nothing else from this space, you have to know that what works for you is what works for you.
Come on.
Don't compare it. Don't question it. Don't judge it. Don't quantify it. If it works for you, it is for you. And don't let anybody tell you that it's not enough, right? I think about when I first started, like even thinking about reclaiming my health and getting control over my body temple. I literally used to be like, okay, my goal this week is to eat breakfast, and breakfast was a Pop-Tart and some ocean spray. And you have people out there who will be like, that's not blah blah blah. If it works for you, it works for you. If you say I'm going to start, getting more connected to nature, and all you do is go outside and sit in your car and park in a parking lot and look at the tree and just sit there, and that's closer to nature than you being in the house sitting on your computer at Facebook. If it works for you, it works for you, because you have to start somewhere. So you have to realize that nobody can tell you that it's not enough, and your self-care and your radical self-care is going to look different. And the first competition that you have is getting over that thought in your mind, right? And being being able to truly tap into your heart center and say, like, this is something that I have to do for me. Like Jasmine said, like, I'm reclaiming my life. I'm getting power over myself. And so nobody can tell you it's not enough. And I can be honest, just even as a person, as a daughter, as a sister, as a lover, as a partner, I oftentimes have been in the place of trying to control and tell people what it looks like to have self-care. And so I'm talking to y'all and telling you that, but it's also a reminder to myself that I don't have the power to define like what someone's self-care can and should look like. If it works for you, then that is what self-care is for you. And so just remember that. It's just about reclaiming yourself and like getting that power with yourself. So yeah.
Right on. Because I had Cinnabon yesterday and I felt amazing about it. Sure did. Posted it too.
So I had a quick question. It's something we talked about in one of our last episodes. So as women, we do that, but what about our guys? What about our guys?
They need it
Fellas,
too.
They need it too.
Please. Mr. Charles, would you like to chime in? No, Mr. Charles does not want to chime in. Yes, fellas. Listen, nothing we've said here does not identify with any sex.
Right.
Everything here can be used regardless of your age or your gender.
So that reminds me, though.
Except for the womb care.
There's been, people with wombs. If you don't got one. But that reminds me, I think that's a good point of taking care of self. You know, I've heard a lot of conflict in relationships around, like, my man only wants to, like, do the video games and play ball and this and that. And not realizing that that's really what they need. And sometimes that's how they're finding balance. Again, the key word, though, is balance, bro. That's all I'm saying. but you know, to be in that space as a person who's an athlete though and who plays ball, there were many times where a lot of my stress and a lot of my problems got played out on the court.
Amen.
So I think that I kind of understand it a little bit more of like, okay, what are you doing? Not running from your feelings, but also unpacking them. And then what type of tools or strategies are you using? We all have to be whole. We all have to be mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually balanced. So for men, I think, again, self-care, radical self-care is important. And the new thing that I just saw is be okay with saying no without an explanation sometimes.
That goes to that question Laura asked that. She said, what do you do with people who don't understand when you're trying to explain your personal self-care and taking it offensive when it doesn't involve them spending time with them?
We're mirrors. I think that again, it might be something on their end where, you know, they always need to be attached to someone or always need to be close to someone. And I just got into a space where it's kind of like I'm going to explain, but at some point I'm not, and I'm going to have to be able to say, like, maybe this is not the right fit or maybe it's not working, but working through why. You know, like why and what is it about you, you know, what's coming up for us in our relationship? Because when you start to do things for yourself and when you start to say no, that's when your true friends come out. That's when your true family comes out.
Real talk. Real talk. And I find also, like, as women too, sometimes it feels like we almost outgrow our mates. You know, so like when you're looking to better yourself and you're looking for that radical self-care in a relationship, I feel that maybe sometimes the men, because they're not doing that exploration also, kind of like you kind of are on two different spaces. So how do you stay in a relationship because you care about that person but be that reflection to try to hopefully, like, if they see what I'm doing, you know, or like what does that bring about in a relationship?
Well, I haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been that person.
None of us.
You the married one.
No, Charles in the background going. No.
Oh, I thought you were married.
No.
Come on in. Come on up to the table.
He doesn't want to.
Come on.
Y'all have said some stuff that is like phenomenal. It's like mind blowing. It's all that and then some.
Awesome.
Just like you have to deal with your. I was raised this. I was raised this way. This is what is, you know.
Right.
Your mother. Okay. Boom. Hey, mothers, women, y'all take time for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. Y'all. I'm gonna just leave it at that.
All right.
Y'all take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know. sometimes we're looked at as not being, as men, as emotional or whatever.
Yeah.
Sure.
Because we'll be like, no,
Right.
and move on.
Right.
It's because you have to get to a point where you have to do that.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
you don't, it's
Self-preservation.
detrimental
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah.
But see, just like you were raised to be mothers
Right.
and put everything into,
Right.
we were told
Right.
we couldn't be that way.
Right.
Mhm.
Right on.
So
Come
we
on, you
have
teaching
to
now.
be the ones
You
to
teaching.
sit back
Yeah.
and just, like, no, it can't be like that. Nope, it's got to be like this. Whereas on the inside, we're like
Yeah.
this.
Ooh,
Okay?
y'all can
see, because
baby.
we got the same
She
emotions
is
that you
preaching.
do.
That's right.
Okay? Don't know where your spirituality base
Right,
is,
Yeah,
but
right.
yeah.
the Creator, God, whoever,
Right.
that put us all together. We got the same parts
Mm-hmm.
for the most part.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And the only thing that differentiates us from the other
Mhm.
is those parts.
Yeah.
Right on.
Okay?
Right on.
But the pieces are all the same.
Right on. Right
So
on.
we have the same emotions that you do, but we're told
Yeah.
we can't express them.
Suppressing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got all these emotions, and you're told if you don't express them,
Uh-huh.
you're wrong.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So neither one of us have been taught that that middle space,
Mm-hmm.
that balance. Okay.
Yeah.
And until we can start feeling like, okay, I'm not going to play the game because I got to take out the frustration because I got to do all that. I got to shoot them all down.
Shoot them all up. Yeah.
Mhm.
Video
Okay.
game.
All right, I need some exercise. Let me go to the gym and play some ball and do whatever. But then, what about those of us
Mhm.
who are older
Mhm.
and the body is saying, no, you can't do that like you used
Like,
to.
I'm not gonna
No
do
matter
that.
how much we
Okay.
try, no matter how much we do it, our bodies are constantly saying, no, you got to slow down.
Right.
So there's a frustration even for the elders
Right.
Mhm.
because they can't do it like they did it.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's that just hodgepodge of all this stuff that's going on. And yeah, and the answer is balance.
Yeah.
There's got to be a balance.
Right on. Right on.
So when y'all, I mean, for the most part, we are really okay, although we act like knuckleheads. So y'all give us a break, especially if you got one that ain't a knucklehead.
Mhm.
Right on.
Okay?
Did y'all hear that?
If you got a knucklehead, drop
a
him.
knucklehead.
But that's good though
That
about
is good.
human, just being human and just how we've been conditioned and just trained to be a certain way that for me felt very inhuman, you know. So I think that's good to say.
I'm great. I'm thankful that you brought that up because we haven't had a show where we've had much male conversation. And so I am a big advocate on relationship. I don't really care what your relationship look like, but I have a special, and it's going to sound crazy coming from me, yes, because of who I am, but I really love brothers. And so if you got a brother and his frustrations, he uses basketball or he plays video games, because I do all those things too, so he's an athlete, or he wants to dribble get out there, dribble with him sometimes. Play the video game with him sometimes. Whatever that thing is, I'm not saying that'll help him establish that balance. He'll know that his time is valuable to you, and then maybe it becomes less of video games and more of a conversation or a date night or something like that. So I don't want it to be. I'm thankful you brought that up, and I do not want this show to go much further, not knowing that we have a special love for the men in our community, and especially our brothers.
That's
So.
right.
I think there's this thing about connecting with people from where they are, regardless of if they're like male or female, right? And I think about like my journey and my relationship with my big brother. Like growing up, he was just very like, he's the oldest, and so he went through a lot. He had much closer proximity to a lot of the struggles that my mom went through than I did, and so I used to judge and be frustrated and just kind of watch him in his anger. And over time, I've learned that like me just literally appreciating whatever it is that he gives for what it is. is. No judgment placed on it, no blame, no anything will allow for me to do exactly what you said, was to get closer. Because sometimes he's talking to me about stuff and I'm like, why are we talking about this, right? So I'm all in my head dismissing it, judging it, making assumptions about it. And I've seen that also happen like in my partnership with a female who just exists in her masculine energy in a different way than I do, right? And so like learning how to literally just like appreciate it for what it is and like connect with him and be like, okay, so you about to talk about this for like 30 minutes, which is cool. I'm gonna talk about this, like whatever. And then I can then like have that conversation as a springboard for something else, because I feel like there's something different about the way that our males are like basically taught to exist. Like it's almost like their existence is problematic. Like the way I do it is always a problem. So my brother would always be on the defense, always on the defense. And so what I learned was like in listening to him and making space to hear from him, it drew us closer because it made him see that like I'm just as interested in what you're talking about, and do you reciprocate that? So it allowed for us to then have that back and forth, which led to even more conversations. And I'm not perfect in it, right? And I don't think I ever will be. But I think with my brother, I've seen a tremendous amount of growth in our relationship, just merely based off of just like him meeting me where I'm at, me meeting him where we at, and neither one of us have to move to the other spot, but just literally appreciating it for what it is in that season. So
you know what I have had a challenge with in various different capacities of relationships in my life is that people not understanding or accepting the fact that you're starting to vibrate on a different level. Your vibrations are elevating, and not understanding where you are at that point in time in your life, and expecting an explanation or expecting you to remain in their space until they're ready to make the move. And what I will be proud of myself to say is I've gotten really good at being okay with ending relationships that just were not, that were toxic, that were not, just did not give the energy that I needed to keep going in my plight, to elevate and vibrate on a different level and on a different plane, and being okay with saying that it's just not for me. This is I just can't be here. It's not necessarily anything wrong with these people or that person, and it's family members, friends, sisters, brothers, cousins, sisters, that just don't understand. We started this conversation off talking about how we were as parents and as mothers, and when I can proudly say I have adult children now. So if I don't want to be at a birthday party with 13, 20, 50, 7-year-olds, I don't want to be there. And I don't have to be there. And that doesn't mean I don't love the 7-year-olds. That doesn't mean I doesn't love you. Right. But I have afforded the luxury to say I don't have to be at a 7-year-old's party. And I'm vibrating someplace else. I'd rather entertain adult conversations today. That don't mean I won't be at the next birthday party. Y'all got 12 kids. I might be at the 9-year-old's birthday party in 2 months. But today, be okay with me not being okay with being in this space and having that challenge, that pushback from the people who you perceive to be the ones who love you and want to see you grow as a person.
That was touched on a little bit of the other part of Laura's question, so we got that all the way answered for her. That's good stuff. Good stuff. Any other last? But we're a little bit over.
I think you encourage them by just doing it for yourself. Like as you shift, everything around you shifts, and sometimes that means creating space and like shifting your environment, and other times it doesn't. It means that your vibration will then emit the environment and raise it to where you are, because it can't exist any other way. And sometimes it's temporary, right? Like that's why getting to truly have an understanding of some of your elements, right? Like thinking about how your astrological makeup is affecting you, or even thinking about like your life path or destiny card number, thinking about like your spiritual aspects, like how are those things playing into the way that you experience self-care and self-love. And I think doing that allows for you to know, okay, these are the spaces where I may need to create distance and space, and these are the spaces where I just got to confront some really, really tough pieces of myself in order to be present right here, because my journey is calling me to be here. And those are distinct spaces, and sometimes your journey may call for both, sometimes your journey may call for neither. But the more that you grow closer to self, which is what self-care and radical self-care is about, is like learning these aspects of yourself, getting connected to your spirit, getting connected to your own source, whatever that is, whether you call it God, whether you call it universe, whether you call it blibber blabber, whatever you call it, getting connected to your divinity and to your source as a spirit, so that you can then know what do I need to do? What is the path that needs to happen for me to truly love on myself, which creates an abundance in any environment that I'm in?
Absolutely.
It's your birthright.
The thing is grow too, like being okay with growing. And I love that being said that, you know, sometimes I've been in many spaces where it's like, you're just not the same person. And I'm like, well, I mean, that's a part of the plan, you know?
Right.
Very intentional part of the plan. All right, we are over time. I apologize for those of you who want to continue conversation. Though, please do send messages after the fact. I will get them to anybody around the table that you're interested in getting connected with. Thank you all for tuning in to our annual edition of Let's UnPack. We'll see you in 2 weeks with a new show. Do it for the culture.